yeah, top 13 questions in hydroponics. This is about to happen. Oh yes, 13 questions. Top 13 questions, growers. Hello, everybody. Top 13 questions in hydroponics is what we're talking about tonight. Welcome back to the show. If this is your first time here, my name is Andrew, and I'm from a company called Aero-Gro, and our mission is to help people like you to grow indoors hydroponically, aeroponically, any way you want without soil. That's our mission, and we hope to do it really well and answer lots of your questions tonight and any night. By the way, this show is, it's live, but it also has comments turned on, or I should say chat turned on. So feel free to send in your questions. And if I can, I'll answer them in this show. And if I cannot cover them in this show, I will definitely cover them in an upcoming episode. So do send them in, like and subscribe. Do send in your comments and let me know how I'm doing and let me know how I can do it better for you. So tonight, like I said, we're talking about 13 of the most common questions that get asked by people in hydroponics and aeroponics, according to, this is how I did this. So I started by going to Google, just very simple Google search. I literally put in top questions for hydroponics or in hydroponics or some variation on that, right? And it came up with, I don't know, maybe 15 or so total questions. And I went through those, and then I went and I started going down the rabbit hole and doing a bit more research. And I kind of took all these responses, got all these responses back for the top questions, and curated that list so that they are questions that we can answer within the next hour. So what I also decided to do, because there were a lot of questions that I can't get to tonight, is I decided to split this up into multiple segments. So tonight are the top questions, and next time we do questions, it will be the next series of questions from researching it the same way on Google and a few other search engines. So here we go. Top 13 questions, starting with number 1, in no particular order, really. I just put these together, like I said, from multiple sources. So what EC do you want to maintain in hydroponics? So first of all, let me just mention really quickly, EC, when we're referring to EC, we're of course referring to electrical conductivity. So water on its own, distilled water, this is not distilled water, but if it were distilled, it would have virtually none or no electrical conductivity on its own. What gives water its conductivity is the minerals that are in the water, right? And that's also what the nutrients are made of that you feed your plants. They're made of salts, and those salts make that water electrically conductive. We measure that electrical conductivity, and that gives us the nutrient density of that nutrient solution. So as far as what EC to maintain in hydroponics, that is going to depend on what you're growing. So if you're growing lettuce, your EC requirement will be much lower because lettuce is a green, leafy, light, wispy, low nutrient demand, fast growing produce plant. So its nutrient requirements are very low. And if you're growing something, like I'm trying to come up with a really good example here, like strawberries, for example, a fruiting plant, then the EC requirements are going to be very high because those strawberries are heavy, they're dense, they're fruiting plants. That requires an enormous amount of energy on the plant's part to produce that fruit. So to do that, it has to eat a lot. It's like a teenager. It's like a hungry teenager. It needs to eat a lot, and then it produces the fruit. So the EC requirements are different. And also, you need to keep an eye on keeping the plants together in a grow that are of similar requirements as far as nutrients. So if you have plants that have a 1.2 to 1.8, let's say, nutrient, like lettuce, for example, 1.2 to 1.8, you could grow comfortably with mixed greens or possibly even spinach or something like that. And they would get along okay. And you could kind of balance out the EC requirements of those plants. But typically you're going to fine tune it based on the plant that you're growing and the nutrient requirements it has. Also based on where it is in the growth cycle. When a plant is young and in a seedling stage, its requirements are very low. In fact, if you give it too much, you give it EC too high, you can burn it, you can damage the plant. So you keep it very low in the beginning, and then you raise it as the plant grows and matures, and then you raise it even higher as the plant begins to produce flowers or fruits. So EC varies up and down. And I have actually, let me show you, I have a chart here that I can show you. Now, what I want you to do is I want you to, in a second here, I'm going to show you a QR code. Go ahead and you can grab that QR code. If you're watching this on TV and you want to scan it with your phone, you can do that and go there and check it out. But I have the downloadable version of this chart, which you can't see the whole thing on screen right now. It's a screenshot. I can only show you a tiny piece of it. But if you go to this page on my website, on the Aero-Gro website, you can download this or just scroll down and take a look at it right now. This is, if you want to navigate to aerogro.com, this is on the blog, and it's this title, Recommended EC and pH. It's posted today. And here's the QR code for it. Going to send it over. There you go. If you were using a phone, you can scan that. And that'll take you there. So this chart, it lists many commonly grown vegetables that are grown hydroponically and the recommended EC value for growing them, including the pH value, the EC and the pH, which are two of the main parameters you are paying attention to when you're growing hydroponically, are pH and your EC. We're on EC right now, so I'm going to stick with that. But this chart will show you some guidelines. Now, this is not a hard and fast rule. It doesn't mean that every variety of each of these plants is going to grow equally well given these parameters that I give you here. This is a general guideline, but a very good place to start. And as long as you keep it within these parameters, I'm fairly certain you're going to grow just fine. And plants, keep in mind, are very resilient. They're not these weak little things. They have a lot of resiliency, but you do have to give them what they need. And by maintaining that EC, you're doing that. You're giving your plants what they need. And with a little guidance, you can give it to them when they need it. And that's all you really need to do. That's all you really need to know about that is you need to mix it properly and then deliver it when they need it. Make sure that they have it when they need it, and they will be super happy and will produce really well for you. Okay, so you know what? Let me see. Yeah, I'll show that to you in a sec. I'll get back to that. All right, the next thing I want to show you is water quality important. No, wait, what kinds? I'm skipping around here. What kinds of plants can be grown hydroponically? What kinds of, there we go. What kinds of, oh, I have a logo on my head. I just noticed that. Okay, let me see if I can take care of the logo on my head. There we go. No more logo on the head. All right. So what kind of plants can be grown hydroponically? I'm trying to get myself so I'm not like, got the light in my glasses here. Okay, there we go. What kind of plants can we grow? Almost, every time I think there's something that probably is impossible to grow hydroponically, I go Googling it and I come up with some mad scientist who has grown that weird thing hydroponically. So as far as I can tell so far, there are not many, if any, so far, common of fruits and vegetables that we would know of that cannot be grown hydroponically. Now, I'm not talking about trees. That's a different thing. And what am I not talking about? I'm talking about fruit, strawberry plants, for example, plants that produce fruit, blueberries, any kind of the berries. Let's see here. Obviously, any of the vegetables we're used to seeing on our kitchen tables and dinner plates. Most of them have been done successfully commercially using hydroponics. In fact, let me show you something. About, I don't know, maybe 6 months or so ago, I was in this phase where I was trying to find things that could not be grown hydroponically because I wanted to talk about that. And I found potatoes. I know it's hard to believe. Potatoes can be grown hydroponically. For some reason, when I think of potatoes, I think of these things that are way down in the dirt, and they're so part of the dirt that when you pull them out, you've got to really wash them off and scrape them before you can even eat them, because they're just mostly dirt. That's how I think of potatoes. So when I found out that they were being grown hydroponically without dirt, I said, that's pretty cool. Let me show you what that looks like. I have a really short video here that shows potatoes. This is crazy. That shows you potatoes being harvested hydroponically somewhere in the Far East, I would imagine. Oh shoot, where is it? Oh, I hope I brought it over. Hold on. Oh no. Let's see here if I can find it. Yeah, it's potatoes that are harvested. Basically, they all grow up on top of this mesh, it appears from the video, and they just grow down through this mesh, and then they're harvested from below, ultimately. Okay, let me see if I can find this video really quickly. I did not add it for some reason. I thought I already had it, and I really want you to see this. It's super cool. Potatoes, I'll call it. All right, let me see if I can find it here. Yeah, and yeah, like I said, almost anything that you can imagine being grown in your garden out back is probably growable hydroponically. So, I mean, technically speaking, of course, if you what's the definition of hydroponics is what some people ask. And I say, well, if you've ever taken a plant and you've put it in a glass of water and you're trying to root the plant so that you can make a duplicate of it, a clone of it, that is hydroponics. Technically, that is hydroponics. And it is it's a very simplified version of hydroponics. And nonetheless, that is an example of it. So you know what? Oh, here it is. Potatoes, MP4. Yeah, that's it. Let's try this. Potatoes, MP4. Okay. And let me see if this works. Yeah, check that out. Picking potatoes, hydroponic potatoes. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. We're going to see that again. These little baby potatoes. They're so cute. I'll bet they taste good too. That's actually one of our questions about the taste of hydroponic foods. We'll get to that in a sec. So there you go. Hydroponic potatoes. So yeah, even potatoes, those dirty, nasty things that grow down deep in the dirt and look like they're never going to come clean, they too can be grown hydroponically. And like I said, that's probably in the Far East that they're doing that. It could be anywhere really. But technically a lot of the research and a lot of the actual commercial scale hydroponics is happening for food production is happening in the Far East. And there's a lot of research in Israel as well. So yeah, and as I've said in other videos, one of the goals of this company, of Aero-Gro, is to bring some of that technology into a form that can be used by the average homeowner here in the United States. So that's part of our mission. That's what we're doing here. So yeah, that's a good example of it though. So let me just talk about one other thing having to do with what you can grow. What are the restrictions? Why could you not grow certain things under certain conditions? Really, what it comes down to is you're growing basically two different types of plants when you're growing hydroponically. Either you're growing the green leafy variety, and variations in between, or the tall woody type of plants, the vining plants, the cucumbers and the tomatoes and the cannabis and the plants like that grow up and tall and woody and that need to be in a bucket, and they need to be in a structure that can support the weight of the root and the base of the plant, because these plants, some of them can get really big. If you provide them with everything they need and the space to grow and the climate that they need, they will be super producers. So if you're ready for that, you have something that can support the plant. The green leafy plants, the lettuces and the plants like that, they can grow in very shallow trays. They grow very quickly, and they're harvested very quickly, and there's really not a problem. You also typically won't have much of a problem with root rot in those installations where you're growing quickly, because typically there's not enough time for very much of a root rot situation to take hold. That's not always true. Root rot can be very quick and devastating, but typically those crops that are fast turnover are a bit safer because of that fast turnover, as long as all other factors are being equal. So almost anything. And as far as what can be grown in what type of equipment, there is some crossover, but typically, like I said, the green leafies are grown in the shallow dishes and the troughs, and the taller, woody, heavier, fruit-producing plants, bulkier plants, are grown in the bucket systems typically. That's how we divide them up very roughly. So number 3 is water quality important in hydroponics? Super important for a couple of reasons. First of all, there are plenty of things in the municipal water supply, the city water supply around the country, that you don't want your plants to come in contact with, such as chlorine, for example. And that's just the start. Chlorine is just the first one, but there are a host of things in the water that can be found that can be harmful to plants, especially in higher amounts. And the thing about city water, well water, any water really, is that you typically won't know what's in the water without some testing. You can certainly send your water in for testing to a lab. That's one way to go. But you can also simply use a 5-in-1 meter, like this one. A 5-in-1 meter will tell you how much of whatever is in your water. What I mean by telling you whatever is, for example, okay, this is reverse osmosis water, drinking water that I get from upstairs in a 5-stage reverse osmosis system. We use it for cooking and drinking and all of that. And I have it in EC mode, measuring in microsiemens per centimeter. Okay, I'm going to put this in the drinking water. I'm not even going to look at the screen. You're going to look at the screen. All right, now I'm looking at the monitor. It says 40. Okay, so I have to replace my filters soon, which I can talk about in another video. But yeah, 40, a measurement of 40 means that, well, the way I actually measure my filters upstairs, I'll show you. I put it in ppm mode, and based on the ppm, which is a different type of reading, which says 15, that tells me actually that my filters are okay. 15 is not too bad. When the reading gets up to about 50, about 40 or 50, that's when it's time to replace the filters upstairs in the reverse osmosis. But here's why it's important for hydroponics. If you remember before, I mentioned that you are measuring the strength of the solution, of your hydroponic nutrient solution, based on the electrical conductivity. That's measuring how much of those nutrient salts are in the nutrient solution, right? That's being done with your 5-in-1 meter. And when it gets up to whatever you need it to be, you know you're good, and then you can use your solution. You're using your meter to measure that. Now, when you go to measure pH, it's the same thing. If I measure the pH here, I'm going to put it in pH mode. There we go. pH mode of the drinking water is 8.3, 8.2. Not too bad. I mean, that's pretty good. I mean, that's 8.1. It'll go down a little bit as it sits here because it needs to hone in on the reading. It takes about 15 seconds. And so if I'm anywhere over 7.9, yeah, that's pretty good. I'm close to 8 there. That's slightly alkaline water. 7 is right in the middle, right? So 8 would be slightly alkaline water. That's not too bad to start. And the parts per million were, what were we at there? 15, I think it was. Parts per million is, and here's why that's important. I'll show you in a second. Parts per million of this reverse osmosis water from upstairs, 5-stage reverse osmosis, is, okay, now it's showing 14, yeah. 15 parts per million. Now, when you go to prepare your nutrient solution, let's say it's using the ppm scale, and it's telling you 750 parts per million. Well, if that's a scale you're using and you're measuring your nutrients that way, that's fine. I prefer to measure using EC as the scale instead of ppm, instead of TDS. but that's up to you. It depends which way you're growing. But let's say, for example's sake, that you're measuring in your TDS, and that's in parts per million, and your water has 40 parts per million of something in it, let's say. Then when you go to prepare your 500 parts per million solution, you actually want to be preparing 540 parts per million solution to allow for that extra 40 parts per million of something that's in your water when you started, right? So your baseline, or the point that the water is when you start the process, but before you've added anything, that's your starting point. That should be as close to zero as possible. If you were using distilled water, it would be pretty close to zero. I measure usually with distilled water from the store, bought from a gallon container, usually about 1 or 2 parts per million of something. So it's not really fully free of everything, the distilled water, but it's darn good enough. Distilled water actually is unnecessary. Reverse osmosis water is perfectly fine as long as your filters are in good shape, and you can bring that ppm down to below about 50 parts per million. And typically when you have a brand new set of filters in your system, you'll have about 10 parts per million to 20 parts per million. And that will go for months and months and months. And you'll consistently get 10 to 20 parts per million water out of your reverse osmosis system. Use it for hydroponics, for drinking, for cooking, for watering your outside garden, for your fish tanks, for your pets, for everything, for showering. We filter the entire house water here, and all the water is free of all that nasty stuff. So the quality of the water is extremely important. Both the pH, well, ultimately you can correct the pH, but the quality of water as far as it being as free of impurities as possible when you begin, and also being, from a good reputable source. If you can get it out of your own faucet and know that it's been filtered properly, that's ideal. That's what you really want. And everything else you are going to add to it, and then it becomes your nutrient solution. So that's how that works. And I always recommend one of these, because otherwise you really don't know what's going on. This is ours. We do sell this, but you can use anybody's. It doesn't have to be ours, but it should just be a meter that will measure both pH and EC, and also preferably the TDS measured in parts per million. That's helpful to have for other reasons too. So if you can get those three, that's a pretty good start. Or you can get the 5-in-1. I had to put that in there. Don't hate. So, okay. Let's move on. What pH should I maintain in hydroponics? All right. So, very general rule in all hydroponics is that the pH range is generally anywhere from 5.5 to 6.5. That covers just about everything, but as with all things, there are some exceptions. And the pH is super important. It's important. I'm going to mention this really quickly. It's not the question. The question is simply, what pH should I maintain in hydro? And I'll talk about that more in a sec. But it's super important because the pH determines the plant's ability to absorb particular nutrients based on the pH. If the pH is low, certain nutrients become available to the roots. When the pH is higher, certain other nutrients become available to the roots. Depending on what plant you are growing, it needs a particular cross-section of nutrients, which means that in order for that particular cross-section of nutrients to be available to your plant, the pH needs to be kept in that proper place for those nutrients to be deliverable to your plant. That's why pH is important to maintain. What the proper pH is really comes down to the type of plant that you're growing and the variety, and what pH is being recommended. It's going to be a topic for debate with certain types of plants. It's one of those things that, for example, in the world of cannabis, holy cow, talk to like every grower, and you will get a different recommendation based on a bajillion different factors for pH. So it really depends. And every farmer is going to have probably tweaks on what pH they keep either nutrient solution or their soil for particular vegetables. I'm sure it's highly debated there too. So yeah, it's highly debated, but there are guidelines. And on that chart that you looked at a few minutes ago, there are some guidelines for where you want to maintain it. And anywhere in between those numbers that are provided will be fine per plant by plant basis. Okay, so one thing I want to show you here though, let me show you this. Another thing you can grab and download, and we'll take a look at it right now. Whoops, to take that off. There we go. Oop, no, what just happened? Okay, that's not what we want. We want that. I know that was cool to see that again though. I never get tired of looking at that. Okay, so this is the effect of hydroponic nutrient solution pH on nutrient availability. So as you can see, as I was talking about a minute ago, the pH on the left-hand side there, the 4.0, which is very acidic, will make available iron, manganese, boron, copper, and zinc. It'll make those more available. But as the pH goes up higher, as you can see, higher up towards 6.5 and 7.0, the other nutrients that we're very used to hearing about, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, sulfur, calcium, and magnesium among them, there are many, also micronutrients. There are many, but they become available. They become more available at 7.0. So here, down here at 5.3, 5.5, we have all these. Up here at 7.0, we have all these. So based on what plant you're growing and what that plant prefers, you will swing your pH either lower or higher within those tolerances, within that range. So, and you can see right here, it says optimal range. This is based on hydroponic growing. In soil, it's 1 point higher. So it's what is it? 6 to, what the heck is it in soil? I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, leave it in the comments. I believe it's 6.5 to 7.5, I think. I might be off on that. Let me know. I'm not a soil guy. I'm a soil-less guy. I'm the Aero-Gro guy. Okay, so that's what that looks like. And here I'm going to give you the QR code for this, and you can scan that with your phone, this right here, and you can grab that off the website and download it, keep it for yourself, print it, whatever you want, save it, whatever you want to do, and that could be pretty useful. But the other one I think is actually even more useful. That actually gives you the page on the site that gives you the pH recommendations and the EC recommendations. That's immediately useful. So you should probably grab that. So yeah, let's see here. Let me do this. Let me move on to the next one because I realize I'm running a little slowly here. I need to keep this moving. Okay, so you've got your chart for pH. Ideal temperature. All right, I'm glad we're talking about this because this does not get talked about nearly enough. Temperature is super duper important for the roots. The leaves of the plant are not nearly as fussy about the temperature. When the temperature goes up and down outside, plants have adapted to that to a large degree. The roots are a different story. The roots are typically not going to do well when the temperature goes up. So it's important to keep the nutrient solution at the correct temperature because the temperature of your root zone really is highly determined by the temperature of the nutrient solution, especially when you have a relatively fast-paced cycling of the nutrients. That water's going in, it's pulling, the nutrient solution is getting sprayed on the roots. But before that happens, and after it's done with that, it's pulling heat out of that air inside of that chamber, and then it's returning it to the nutrient tank. So it's important to keep the nutrients in the nutrient solution in the nutrient tank cool. How do you do that? First thing is, if you're growing in a tent, locate the nutrient tank outside the tent. Just run a longer hose. If you need to, whatever system you're using. I don't know what system you're using, but whatever you're doing, try to locate the reservoir outside of the tank. Outside of the tent. And that's because the tent tends to get quite warm, of course, because you have lights going on in there typically, and the heat is much higher, even if it's vented. And that light is also going to hit that nutrient tank and is going to heat it up. And because of that, by the way, if you are growing outside for some reason, hydroponically, you can also cover the nutrient tank in a reflective mylar bubble wrap material. You can get it at Home Depot in rolls. And it's an insulating material, very thin. Looks like aluminum foil, but it's like an aluminized version of bubble wrap. That's what it looks like. And you can trim it with scissors, and you can wrap that around your nutrient tank. And that's a great way to reflect light, which helps keep your nutrients cool. And that's really, like I said, super important. The recommended temperature is between 65 and 80 degrees Fahrenheit. The maximum range is a little wider than that. The maximum range is 59 to 86 is the maximum range for your nutrient solution, but 65 to 80 is really your sweet spot. 65 to 80 degrees is where you want to be for your nutrients. If you deviate above 80, what's probably going to happen at some point is you're going to have an issue with either root rot, which loves warmer temperatures, and or you may have a problem with some insects. And the insects love the water, they love the warm water, they love the smell, they love decaying plant matter, they love all that stuff. Yum, yum. So, for many reasons, including keeping everything clean, keep the temperature down. Oh, yeah, most important thing. Okay. To keep the temperature down in the nutrient tank, the first and most important step, and I always preach this, I can't believe I almost forgot this, is that you need to aerate using an air stone, your nutrient reservoir. So if you have a 5-gallon bucket, 20-gallon bucket, whatever you're using, aerate it. The aeration not only keeps it aerated, oxygenated, and fresher and less desirable to the bad guys, it also helps to cool the reservoir, to cool the nutrients, in fact, in the reservoir, which keeps the whole thing cooler. And that will go a long way, especially if you're using that air stone in the reservoir outside of a grow tent, where it's cooler. Presumably it's cooler in the room outside of the tent, right? So if you keep it out there and aerate it, that will go a long way to keeping the temperature correct. So there you go, top tip for the day on temperature control. And obviously, temperature is very important inside the tent too. If you are growing in a tent or in a room, if you've converted a room, or in a greenhouse, if you've converted that, all greenhouses, all grow rooms that are significant have ventilation. You have to, because the plants are, if you remember this from biology class, I think middle school or high school, I don't remember, but they teach you about how plants, first of all, they are transpiring all day long. They're releasing water from their leaves all day long into their environment, right? So the environment in which they grow is becoming more humid. And also, typically you're using artificial lights and you're heating the environment up that way. So that's heating up the entire environment. And so greenhouses and grow rooms and tents and so forth are ventilated to cool them, but also, and this is the 8th grade biology part, to bring in carbon dioxide, because that's what they breathe, right? We breathe out carbon dioxide and plants breathe that in. And then what do? They convert that into oxygen, or they release it as oxygen, and they use up the other component of it, right? So that's how they breathe. So they need that CO2. They need that good source of dirty breath air from you and your pets and from everywhere else in the world, all the carbon dioxide sources. They need that. So you need to keep that ventilation going, not only inside of the tent, but inside of the room and in and out of the room. You need air exchange, that's called. So it's not the same air. If you go back into that room or into that grow tent or that area 20 minutes later, all that air should be different. Should be brand new air from somewhere else, wherever the source is for your house. So you do want to keep that ventilation going. That's very important. That's a different type of temperature control, but equally important. The question, in fact, is literally, what is the ideal temperature in hydroponics? And once again, much like pH and EC, the ideal temperature will depend on what you are growing and to some degree what part of the life cycle of the plant you're in. And by saying these things, I'm not trying to make it sound more complicated. What I'm trying to say is that it's simpler. There's a range that you need to operate within, which actually makes this all quite simple. It sounds like a lot of information, but it's really only a few things. It's pH, it's the EC of your nutrient solution, it's temperature, obviously, but within a range, again, and it's making sure all of these components are working together to provide the plants what they need when they need it. And as long as that's being done, and most of that's handled by the system automatically, the lights can go on and off automatically. The nutrients are delivered in an aeroponic or hydroponic system automatically with timers. Much of these things are automated, but there are a few things that you are required to pay attention to, and those are the things that are super important, like the nutrient solution, the temperature, and the pH. So so number 6 was, why is pH important in hydroponics? I actually did cover that a few minutes ago. We talked about that it allows the nutrients to become available. So, do plants grown hydroponically taste better? Well, yes, if they are grown correctly. And what I mean is, it's the same as with farming anything. If you have a farmer who doesn't know what they're doing, they're not going to grow very good tomatoes or produce of any kind. It's going to be pretty bad. The same thing is true for hydroponics. If you do it correctly, and again, that simply means keeping it in parameters and avoiding diseases and avoiding pests and stuff like that, then yes, your produce, your resultant products from your plants should be top-notch. The taste is somewhat affected by the nutrients that you use in terms of them being maintained in the plant when you harvest it. So what commercially is done is they will flush the plants or the produce, whatever the product is. They'll flush it a few days before they harvest it. What that means is they'll give it pure water, no nutrients in it, just pure water for several days, well, different formulas, but several days or maybe up to a week in some cases, to flush out any residual nutrients that may be left inside the plant that may affect the flavor. That leaves the plant in its purest state, having grown up with all the right good stuff, and then free of any of that at the time that it's harvested, and it's back down to its natural state, which is amazing. And if you have ever tasted a hydroponic tomato that's grown well, or a hydroponic strawberry that's grown well, it will change the way you view produce forever. Or cucumbers, another good example. Cucumbers grown hydroponically are often amazing. They're almost like dessert treats because they're so sweet and so good. So yeah, they taste great. These behind me right here. Now I'm not going to eat them right now because I haven't flushed them. I want to flush the. I want to flush those tomatoes before I harvest them. But yeah, they taste. I did taste one a few weeks ago on camera, and it was amazing. Okay. Number 8. What are the difference between growing in soil versus hydroponics? Well, we've covered this before, but very basically, very quickly, in soil, your soil is your regulator of the pH and of the nutrients. It holds the nutrients, the soil does. And it holds the moisture. And it maintains the pH like a buffer. And your roots go out and they get the water and the food that they need by reaching out and branching out to it in the soil. In hydroponics and aeroponics, we take the nutrients to the roots. The roots don't have to do anything. They have to sit there, be happy, grow big and strong, and make the plants even better. We give them the nutrients with the proper pH and the proper amount of nutrients, the right nutrient density at the right time, and we provide the light and so forth, and then they just grow big and happy and strong, and it's an ideal situation. Everything that they need, they get when they need it. In soil, that doesn't happen. In soil, you might get rain one day, and then you might not get rain for 3 weeks, so it goes into a different mode because there's no water. You can have your nutrient levels could be off in your soil, and then it has to be corrected over a period of time. It's not instant in soil. It's another benefit of hydroponics is that when you make a change to the nutrient solution, it's instant. Your plants can You will see the result, and your plants will realize the result of your efforts almost immediately when you make a change to the pH or nutrients or a correction to that nutrient solution. In soil, it could take days or weeks, or you may not get it at all that season. You may lose your crop. So it does provide an opportunity to be prescriptive in your approach to problems when they occur very quickly and very successfully in hydroponics. Okay, so those are some of the differences. Also, hydroponics, of course, this gets mentioned a lot, is very efficient when it comes to water. It uses 95% less water than watering your plants out in the garden, in the soil, because out in the soil-based garden, if you think about it, the water goes down through the soil and it keeps on going. It doesn't come back. But in a hydroponic installation, that water just keeps getting circulated again and again and again until it has to be replenished, corrected, added to, whatever, but it doesn't get lost in the same way. It gets lost through the leaves, through transpiration. The leaves release moisture. That does happen quickly, but you don't lose it by having it go down into the ground and disappearing into the water table. With hydroponics, you avoid that part. So water savings are huge. And hydroponics is easily expandable. I suppose you could say soil-based is even easier to expand, but hydroponics is literally just adding components to the system to expand it. Whereas in typical soil-based gardening, I mean, you're building your soil over a pretty long period of time in order to make it really productive. So one could argue that that's a much more sophisticated process growing in soil that takes longer because you have to build the soil. So those are some of the differences. What causes leaves to turn yellow in hydroponics? Wow, just about anything. Now, not to be smart about it, but many things can cause leaves to turn yellow in hydroponics. In fact, it's one of the first signs you should look for. It can be caused by problems with the roots. Root rot, for example, can result in your leaves looking very unhealthy, and you should check the roots at that point, see if they're brown or yellow or grayish or funky looking in any way other than fairly pure white. Now, they may not be, your roots don't necessarily have to be like paper white. Sometimes they are, but they should be relatively white. If they're anything other than that, there's probably a problem going on. You need to add some hydrogen peroxide to the water, which we've talked about in other videos, or you need to make another correction. But usually what it is a nutrient, your nutrients are off somehow when the leaves turn yellow. In fact, I have an example right now going on behind me of what looks to be a nitrogen deficiency. And the way you can tell that, I'm going to show it to you on camera. The way you can tell that is that you will see yellowing of the leaves in some way. Either an entire part of the leaf will be yellow, like the tip, or you'll see it in the veins of the leaves. That's what I'm seeing here. I'll show you. So yeah, if you look right here, like that, see that yellow? Let's see if I can get this in focus. Yeah, you can see that. That is a classic nitrogen deficiency. So yeah, sorry, hopefully you could see that. I tried to hone in on that the best I could. It's very clear to me by eye. Hopefully you could see that on camera. But those yellow striations in the leaf, those are very indicative of a nitrogen deficiency. So just before I went on the air tonight, I did add some fresh nutrient solution to it. I have not measured it yet, but hopefully that will take care of it overnight. And by the time I get here in the morning tomorrow, the leaves should have corrected more or less entirely. I mean, it could take another day for it to completely correct, but it's very fast when you make corrections in hydroponics and aeroponics. So that's another one of those advantages that you can look forward to. But yeah, what the question was, what caused the leaves to turn yellow? The other things that can happen is you can have a pest infestation. If there's so many different types of pests. I'm going to go over a little bit of that right now. All right, let's just go right there. So I'll end with the leaves turning yellow. That it's usually a nutrient deficiency, and what you need to do is check everything. Check your pH, check your nutrient levels, check that the nutrients you're using are appropriate for the plants that you're growing, that the nutrient density is correct, that you're monitoring it often enough, that those things are taken care of. Because if the nutrients are good, you shouldn't have that yellowing due to nutrients. So the next thing on the list, of course, is pests, which also, like I said, can cause the yellowing, but usually it's more noticeable than even the nutrient deficiency, because when pests attack, usually the leaves will get really gnarly looking. They'll get wilted, or they'll get curly and tough, and they'll get hard on the edges, or they'll get they you know what it looks like? It literally, if you look on the plant and you find that there are these little bugs on the plant itself looks like it's being attacked. It looks like it's been beat up, really, honestly. The leaves usually look like they've been through war. And that's how you know something's gnawing away at your plant. Sometimes they'll actually eat into the roots of the plant, or they'll infest the leaves. Things like fungus gnats. Fungus gnats love algae and dead stuff, and they will just annihilate your crop if you let them. But here's the thing about pests. All right, hydroponics is very clean. I'm going to be honest with you. Not that I'm normally not. I'm trying to place emphasis on this because it's kind of an unexpected fact. That pests, for me, have literally never been a problem. No, I shouldn't say that without knocking on wood, right? Never been a problem for me in hydroponics. I have always grown indoors. That's one of the reasons. I'm not an outdoor hydroponics grower. I'm an indoor hydroponics grower. So my environment typically is very clean. Very organized. I try to keep any dead leaves and dead matter to a minimum. I do use hydrogen peroxide in the nutrient solution. I also use hydrogen peroxide to clean all of the equipment. Anything that I use, anything that gets touched by a nutrient solution or a plant gets hit with hydrogen peroxide, diluted of course. And because of that, I think, is why I've never had a problem with pests. Pests love it when you have root rot and filthy conditions and it's really warm and wet and a great place to have a party. That's what they like. If you can keep it drier, properly ventilated, and cleaner, I mean, I'm not going to say you'll never have a problem with pests, but you will probably never have a problem with pests. And if you do, super simple solution for things like gnats. I'll show you right here. You take a little bit of vinegar. You take 50, it's half and half. You take 1 part water to 1 part vinegar. So I'll put like a tablespoon of vinegar in there. And then you put about a tablespoon of water. So 1 to 1 with vinegar. Like that. And then you take just a few drops. Can you see what I'm doing? Yeah, you can see that. A few drops of dish detergent. I don't know, it's about 4 or 5 drops. And then you just, that's Dawn, you know, that stuff. And takes grease out of your way. And it saves a lot of ducks from oil spills. It's good stuff. Okay, so you mix that up and you stick that over in the area wherever you have those little flying gnats or little flies of any kind, fruit flies or gnats of any kind. The vinegar will attract them, and the dish soap will get the job done quickly. So trust me, they're not going to suffer. Okay. So that's how you do that. And you just place that within a couple feet of the area you're working on. Behind me here, if I ever did have a problem, I would probably put one of these on each shelf. And that would most likely take care of any flies or critters. So that's how you get rid of anything like gnats. Let's see here. Aphids. Now, aphids are weird critters. I don't think you're ever going to have a problem with aphids inside if you're growing indoors. Aphids are more for that's like greenhouses and outdoor growing. You get aphids. I mean, it's possible. Sure, it's possible. But yeah, they're really strange. I mean, aphids, all right, here's how strange they are. You want to know how strange they are? Here's how strange aphids are. Aphids are so strange. They can be born pregnant. That's how strange aphids are. Look it up. I didn't know that until I looked it up. I was like, that's crazy. Let's get rid of them. So, yeah, no, I think that's probably not going to be a problem for you. Just be aware that it is something that has happened in commercial grows, and it can happen. And if it does, there are ways you can get rid of them. And I'm about to mention a product to get rid of just about any problems that you have, and that is Neem Oil, Neem. I'll put a link to some in the description. Not any particular brand, just neem oil in general. Neem oil, you take it and you dilute it typically in the bottle, and you will spray it on the leaves if you have any kind of bugs of any kind, or any kind of fungus or any kind of disease of plants. Neem oil goes a long way to eliminating those little critters, especially when they're pests of any kind. Anything that lays eggs, anything that flies, anything that tends to feast on either the roots or the stems or the leaf matter of a plant will typically be treatable with neem oil. So definitely look into neem oil. Neem oil is good stuff to have on hand for just about any of those problems. So again, thrips, these little critters called thrips can show up and you can kill them with neem. Whiteflies could be killed with neem. Mealybugs, I've never seen any of these in mine, but yeah, these are all things that can show up and they can all be dealt with neem oil. Neem oil, by the way, completely non-toxic, will not hurt you, animals, children, pets, environment, anything. Neem oil is completely natural, but the critters don't like it. There's some sort of I think it's an enzyme reaction. I'm not sure how it works exactly, to be honest, but there's some sort of a reaction that the bugs can't handle. So neem oil turns out to be super effective against them. All right, so moving on. Best way to clean hydroponics, I know I've said this one before, but hydrogen peroxide is your best friend. I buy this stuff by the case. It is the 3% kind that you find in the drugstore in the brown bottle. That is the best solution I've ever found to deal with any kind of root rot. You can treat that, but also cleaning all of your equipment, all of your baskets, all of your tools. Let's see what else. Soaking your sponges in a dilute of hydrogen peroxide and water is a great idea as well. Wow, you can use it for everything. For cleaning out the bottles and jars that you may use for this and that having to do with hydroponics. Clean those out with diluted hydrogen peroxide. You pour it on a sponge. Like take a sponge, you wet it. This is what I do. Take the sponge, wet it with water. I use the reverse osmosis water. I wet the sponge, and then I take some hydrogen peroxide and just pour, a few teaspoons or so onto the sponge and go just one time to distribute it. And then I just wipe everything down. Just wipe it all down. And that will just kill everything that's bad. And again, it's completely natural. It's non-toxic. It won't hurt you, your pets, the environment, or anything. And it won't stain. It won't do anything except for kill the bad guys. So that's what you want, hydrogen peroxide. And yeah, like I said, you can buy it by the case on Amazon or just go to the drugstore and buy it off the shelf or the grocery store. Does hydroponics use a lot of electricity? It depends. No, it does depend. So here's the deal. The components like the pumps and the timers and all of that, no, it uses virtually no electricity. Very low voltage, very low demand, electrical demand of all those small components because they're electronic. They're small, tiny little components. Now, if you start installing, 4-foot long LED light panels, covering your entire basement with, with light panels or whatever, I've seen this. Yeah, your electric bill is going to go up, of course, because you're talking about a single panel having hundreds of LEDs on it. So, yeah, if you have too many of those, it can be significant. But putting it into perspective, LED lighting is very efficient, especially when you get one that's well made and it has an efficient transformer on it. And they can be very efficient. It's just that if you install a lot of anything, it's going to increase the cost. So I would say that in most installations, for the home, I'm talking about, not commercial installations, but for the home, reasonably sized greenhouse, like a a 5 foot wide, 6 foot wide, something like that, 4 foot deep, 6 foot deep, something like that with 1 or 2 lights in it, 1 or 2 4-foot lights in it. You may notice a little bump on your electric bill, but it's like running a couple big TVs or something, like 2 LED TVs or something. It's not that big a deal. But like I said, if you have 20 large screen televisions in your basement, you'll probably notice a pretty big bump on your electric bill. So it depends how many you have. But the components themselves, the pumps and timers and things like that, are basically like running a flashlight. It's super low energy draw. So what do I need to start a hydroponic system? Boy, I get asked this a lot. So again, just going over the basics, what do plants need? They need water. They need a water basin, something for the water to go in, or the nutrient solution to go in. They need the light. Obviously, the light can come from either artificial light that you can use inside the house, artificial LED panel lights, or it can come from a window, or it can come from a greenhouse, from the sun in a greenhouse. Or you can provide light different ways, but of course your plants do need a light. If they're grown hydroponically, all plants need a light. Whether they're grown in soil or hydroponically, where the light comes from is up to you. If you don't want to pay for it, take it from Mother Nature. Put your system by a window, or south-facing window is usually ideal. Or out in your garden in a greenhouse or something like that. I mean, there are ways to experiment with that. But what else does it need? Temperature control. We talked about that. Fans if you're using a tent. Or just an area that has very good air circulation where the air exchange is very rapid. Any area like that is fine for temperature control, and where your nutrient bucket is being protected from getting overheated. So you need that, and you need your grow trays and tables or troughs or buckets or whatever means you're using to pump or spray your nutrient solution into it. You need that, okay? And there's a dizzying variety of ways to do that. You need your nutrient solution. Typically in hydroponics and aeroponics, it will be an A-B nutrient solution, which you can buy on Amazon. I'll put a link below. And you mix those together. We've talked about it in other videos. I'll put a link to that as well. And those will allow you to grow just about anything you want to grow indoors, those A-B nutrients. And it's a wide spectrum nutrient delivery. So you're covering just about all your nutrients with one product. And you can add other products to your nutrient solution to enhance it, but you can start with just an A-B solution. You'll be totally fine. And you don't need the growing you don't need growing medium necessarily. If you're growing hydroponically, you usually will be using a growing medium to support the root structure. But if you're growing aeroponically, no grow medium, just a sprayer that delivers the nutrient solution directly to the roots. No medium required. Look, no medium. Okay, so, and a meter, as I just religiously share with people, is the importance of a 5-in-1 meter. It's literally what made all this possible for me, was a 5-in-1 meter. So very important to have, in my opinion. So water basin of some sort, the grow trays, tables, troughs, buckets, whatever. Light, temperature control, nutrients, and a meter. That's what you need to start hydroponics. So those are the 13 most commonly asked questions according to Google and a few other search engines, as curated by me in the last few days. Now, like I said, there were more questions in this, and I want you to leave I'm going to check YouTube's right now and see if anybody... Hey, Antonio Sanford, hello from Tennessee. Hello from Denmark. Yo, what's up, buddy? Hey, Henrik, how you doing, man? I'm so glad you're watching. That's super cool. Thank you. So that's my friend Henrik from Copenhagen, Denmark. Henrik and I used to live in Copenhagen, Denmark. And Henrik and I have known each other for, oh my God, I don't even want to admit this, like 30 years? Oh God, that's terrible. Okay. Yeah, it's true. 30 years we've known each other, and he was nice enough to tune in tonight to check out the show. So thank you, buddy. I appreciate that. And Francois, oh boy, I might not pronounce this correctly. I'm so sorry. Francois Leguerriere. Hello from Canada. Hello, buddy. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for watching from Canada. I appreciate that. Francois Ligueri. I hope I said that correctly. So, yes, I do appreciate you all being here this week. Thank you so much. And please do remember, like and subscribe, share this with your friends, and most importantly than anything, I think, more important than anything, please tell me what you want to hear about. In addition to these questions I asked tonight, hopefully this sparked some thoughts for you and got you thinking about maybe what I didn't ask or what I didn't answer tonight, or things that I didn't mention here that you'd want to know about. So let me know, and I'll do my best to cover it. And surprise. Okay. Next week, I'm so excited about this. Next week, I'm going to be showing you a prototype that just got sent to me that I had done. I had made a prototype. This is for an upcoming product that hopefully I will be making for you guys. I can't wait to show you this. All right, hold on. I'm just going to give you a hint here. A teaser, if you will. Here you go. Yeah. I'm super psyched. Okay. So I've been working on this product for a long time. And I haven't even opened this box yet. It showed up today. This just came to me from my manufacturer, and it is part A of a 2-part system that I'm hoping to unveil next week on the show. I will be unveiling it next week on the show, one way or the other, come hell or high water. But it's something I've been working on for a long time, and I think you guys are going to really like this. I'm serious. This is pretty cool. And it's a hydroponic tower. It's a vertical grow tower. I will hopefully get it set up this week and running so that we can see it for next week's show, actually up and operational. I would do an unboxing, but this is only part 1 of 2 boxes that I'm expecting, so it wouldn't even be a complete system if I showed it to you tonight. And this here gets combined with my control panel, and then the whole thing becomes a system. And hopefully if everything works well, and you'll go through the process with me to see if it does or not, then this will become a product that you can get. And we will go through the final development stage of the product together. This is what I do. I'm a product developer. So I will go through this with you. I'll show you how this works or doesn't work. We'll find out together. And it should be great. I mean, I've done a lot of research into this, and this should be a fun project. So thank you again, everybody, and especially, hey, Antonio Sanford and Henrik and Francois Leguerrier from Canada. Thank you all for watching, and thank you all for being part of this amazing mission. Really appreciate you all, and I really appreciate any input that you give me. So tune in next week for the tower reveal, and then the week after that, we're going to be doing more questions from the web on hydroponics and aeroponics, specifically touching on some having to do with cannabis production. So because I've been getting asked a lot about that, so I think it's about time we covered some of that. So tune in. The next few weeks are going to be super exciting. So thank you again for being here, and I hope you all have an awesome week, and I will see you all soon. All right. Oh my God, everything's covered with paperwork here. All right. Let's see if I can find the fade button underneath all this paperwork. See you, everybody. Thanks.